Hello, everybody, and welcome once again into the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Dan, what's going on, man?
It's Tuesday. It's week 3. Not a lot's going on. How about you? You having a good day?
I'm having a good day. You know, I'm always having a good day when I am, hydrated on Smart Water, which is the cousin of Topo Chico, who sent us just like barrels and barrels of Topo Chico and Smart Water and vitamin water. So shout out to our guy Mike Streets from Topo Chico, who was kind enough to send us all. I have some for you stashed away, Dan. I know Studs got a couple of bricks of the water. I've got some stashed away for you too, my friend.
So, I know I have shared this at least once on a previous podcast, that National Topo Chico Day is an annual thing on the Bears calendar for some buddies of mine that meet me on the road. That's coming up in November, the Minnesota trip. So maybe Mike Streets can come sponsor an afternoon somewhere in Minneapolis.
I bet he'd be willing. He's a big fan of the Take the North podcast, and we appreciate that. We've been Mike.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching, and to everybody, by the way. Thanks to everybody who supports this podcast on a daily basis. Trust me, we don't take any of it for granted, and we're building something special here. I could just tell you that right now, based on some of the things that we have heard from the powers that be, from Odyssey and the Score. So that said, speaking of the Score, Dan was a guest on the Score, as he frequently is. Dan is one of our best Bears guests, as I always say, and I mean, Dan is the best Bears talker in town, and I am one who talks about the Bears. And we had Dan on the other day, and look, we have a lot of fun with actually, people have a lot of fun with us at our expense for the name of this podcast, Take the North, which is funny. It is ironic. It is funny. It is all that. It's hilarious. We read the comments, and it is very funny that people are always saying, why do you call it Take the North? You should call it, and people fill in the blank, and that's fine. It is hilarious. Dan was on with us, and one of the things that Dan said to us was, you were pleading with the Bears, pleading with the universe, the football gods, that the Bears, for once, just lose normally. As to review, the Bears lost to Minnesota 27-24 in week 1. They blew a 17-6 lead. And by way of a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy making his NFL debut, a quarterback who had been picked 6th in the game, inexcusable. And all I have to say about week 2, Dan, is Lions 52, Bears 21. So we didn't have many normal losses last year either during that 10-game losing streak. Lose normally.
That's it, right? Like, the merch should be available by Halloween. Just lose normally. You'll get your sweatshirts, your hoodies, everything else you need to have. Look, like, I think you and I have kind of been having this discussion here in the last couple of days about the 0-2 start not being the disconcerting part. We knew this was going to be a challenging slate to open the season. We knew 0-2 was a distinct possibility with the Vikings and Lions on tap to get the year going. It's just the fact that they have lost in such spectacular fashion that's been so jarring. And Sunday just unraveled, Grote. You're talking about a defense that we expected to be able to carry the load for the early part of the season, and they gave up 511 yards and 52 points and 7 touchdowns and 156 passer rating and every other number that you want to attach to that blowout. It's startling. And so look, like, the origin story of this podcast, Take the North, was conceived and launched before the name of the podcast was in any way ironic. It was at the start of a new era where we thought maybe the Bears were going to turn a corner and get themselves in position to win a division. It hasn't happened. They've been stuck in last place in the NFC North forever. They seem stuck there for a while to go yet. And now we're not even asking for wins. We're just asking them to just lose normally. Welcome to Just Lose Normally, episode 1, everybody.
Yeah, so we this is the closest that we have come on this podcast to actually entertaining the idea of changing the name of the podcast. But I don't think we'll ever do that, because I do fear, Dan, that the day that we did do that,
they would North and then they would never give it back.
They would never give it back. Yeah.
We'd have egg on our face. And then we would do, Grote, what we don't do on this podcast. We would be forced to call an emergency apology podcast, which we don't do here on Take the North.
An emergency apology podcast. That's hilarious. Well, and I got to tell you, man, while we're on it, the man who uttered those words, of course, was the Bears general manager, Ryan Poles,
yes, sir.
Who is, I would say, more than anybody, not in the hot seat with the Bears, but he is definitely in the media hot seat right now, and he is in the fans hot seat right now. I think he has been the number one mentioned, like, over big picture reason why the Bears are 0-2. At least people are letting out their anger that they're not happy. And I get it to some degree when you have two of your second round picks in Ozzie Trapillo and Shamar Turner that were inactive, not just not contributing, but they were inactive. And then you had Luther Burden, who was barely a factor in the game. Some of this I saw come just to add a little bit of texture to it. I think those of us that have covered this team long enough, or covered the NFL, Dan, and you've done it longer than I have, and we talked about this, man, over and over. When guys miss the off-season program, that very beginning part, the early stuff, which both Colston Loveland, I didn't even mention him. Colston Loveland just hasn't really been a factor through the first two games.
Yeah, I think there's different reasons for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, Colston Loveland and Luther Burden both missed it. So I knew, like, I chose Luther Burden to be my most disappointing player early, and it was based on the guys ahead of him on the depth chart and not feeling like he was quite up to speed as of yet. Ozzie Trapillo can't help you on it, other than the fact that they had him in a left tackle competition, and clearly I hope that they have come to terms with the fact that he is either a right tackle and maybe, if we're being ambitious, a swing tackle.
Yeah. And all of this is a reflection of a bigger topic here. And I think what you're alluding to with sort of the scrutiny that's coming Ryan Poles' way is that you are now 3+ years into roster reconstruction. You have had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to mold this roster to your liking. You've made 34 draft picks. I did the count. There's been 17 unrestricted free agents brought in the building on multiple year contracts. You've got countless one-year deals that have been in there. You've got a number of trades that brought you DJ Moore and Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, et cetera. And your roster still feels like it's a bottom tier NFC roster. And that's jarring, because now you're making draft picks that you expect to help the football team. 2 that you just named there, 3 you just named there, 4 you just named there on day 1 and 2 of this draft. And now those guys aren't finding an opening. And so, Grote, I was doing an exercise, and this marries up with an article that will launch on theathletic.com on Wednesday morning about the state of the roster.
Okay.
And it was, put yourself in the chair of the general manager and start your planning for 2027. We're going beyond this year. We're going beyond next season. And I'm asking you to get out your Sharpie, and on your depth chart, Sharpie only the players that you believe will be automatic, no doubt, fully impact starters for this football team in 2027. And we can do this on the fly here because it's an interesting exercise to do. I did it with my colleague Kevin Fishbane before I put the finishing touches on my article. And you tell me who, with your Sharpie, is getting written on that depth chart for 2027.
2027. That'll be here, or making an impact? You say, or both,
guys,
or
guys that you can count on today in September of 2025 to be impact core starters for your football team 2 years from now.
And I'm sorry for asking all these questions. Draft picks or
anybody on the team? Anybody on the team at all?
Okay. All right. 2027. That's 2 years from now. So not next season, but the following season. Caleb Williams. I do believe I know that for some people that would even be a reach. I am going to go Caleb Williams as one of those guys. I think Drew Dahlman will probably still be with the Bears. TJ Edwards, oh man, I'm not sure about TJ Edwards. I'd like, and this will answer another point that I was about to make. I think Luther Burden will be there. I have not given up on Luther Burden. I told you that I didn't like the fact that he missed the offseason program. The dude is loaded with talent. So
doesn't sound like a Sharpie answer to me, Grote. That doesn't sound like a Sharpie answer.
Okay, all right. I'll put that in pencil.
Yeah, Sharpie means that you don't have to explain it. You're just 100% sure. Like, this guy's here and he's part of our core for the long term.
I lose. Kyler Gordon. No, Sharpie.
All right, you're giving Kyler the Sharpie. Kyler Gordon just missed his 11th career game on Sunday. He's on the short list, no question.
Okay.
Along with Jalen Johnson.
Wiederer.
He's on my short list. Jalen Johnson. How does Jalen Johnson's career get rerouted with the news on Monday that his 2025 season is likely over and potentially headed for season-ending surgery on the groin that he re-injured on Sunday? When you start doing this, Grote, you can't really, you don't even get like beyond like 4 people. I've got Rome Odunze on that list.
Oh yeah, Rome. That's good.
I've got Colston Loveland, but I think it's also requires a leap of faith because we haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah,
from
that's
Colston
not
Loveland.
That's not
and
Sharpie
then,
talk.
And then you've got all these questions, right? And like one of the big questions for me is my most disappointing player from the predictions pod a few weeks ago. It's Darnell Wright.
Yeah,
and the Darnell Wright conversation is insane, Grote, because the reason that you pass on an impact defensive tackle like Jalen Carter is because you are certain you have a sure thing in your back pocket. You're certain you're going to take an offensive lineman that's going to be an anchor up front for you at the tackle position for 8 years or longer. And you make that move because you're veering towards security over potential and some uncertainty, right? And then you're sitting here looking at it 3 years in and you're like, well, is Darnell Wright even going to get a second contract? Are they even going to exercise the 5th-year option on his contract at the end of this year? And so it all circles back to what you started the conversation with, is why, after this much time tearing down the roster, building it back up, reconstructing it, applying a vision, do you still seem so far from legitimate contention? And that's what Sunday afternoon was. It was an illumination of how far from legitimate contention this football team really is.
Right. And it goes back to what we originally started talking about in this podcast. It's, can you lose normally? Not in a way that makes you wonder about everything for the season. You know what I mean? Like 8-9 was my pick for the Bears this season. I'm pretty okay with that still. But I think a lot of people, I feel like most people in this town had the Bears over 500 in their predictions. And I get it. Like with some of the money that they put in to the interior of the offensive line and the coach that they brought in and the urgency that somehow, some way has to be with Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren, that it would have been a winning season for sure. But we'll continue to talk about that. That was kind of a right turn that I just took because
I loved it though.
Yeah, it worked. That's the flow. That's the beauty of Take the North. We'll take it in all sorts of different directions. But another thing, Dan, was you were on the score the other day, and it might be your fault, actually. That
usually is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Dan, you are at fault from much, and you were sort of pleading, literally saying out loud on a 50,000-watt radio station, it'd be nice if the Bears let the Ben Johnson press conference on Monday go a little longer, just so we don't have to be asking questions to Ben Johnson about last week on Wednesday and Thursday and even Friday, because that is what occurred after the Minnesota game. But Dan, it turned out to be pretty short. I was on that Zoom. I didn't get a question in. That was my own fault, though, because I was still walking home from the score. You did get in there. And what did you get, Dan? How did you get 2, 3 questions?
I got 2, but one of them I had to waste because Ben did not open with an opening statement to give us an update on Jalen Johnson, and we all needed a Jalen Johnson update as soon as that thing started. So technically, I only got in 1, and so I've got a list. I've got to jump off camera here in a second to grab my notebook off the desk behind me, because there was a list of about 14 things that I wanted to get to with Ben Johnson. And look, you're not going to get to all of those, but you're hoping 4 or 5. We can get through them. And look, part of this is a selfish request because you want to talk to the head coach. You want to learn more about the football team. You want to learn about what went wrong and how they can fix it. But part of it is to eliminate the aggravation for them, Grote. We heard from Ben and Dennis Allen last week about can we just get the focus forward on the next game? Yes, but we need to get some closure on some things that happened in the last game first. And so by abbreviating those availabilities, now all of a sudden there's things that have to carry forward into this week. On Wednesday, when we meet with Ben again, obviously on Thursday, when we talk to Dennis Allen for the first time, sorry, DA, we're going to have to ask about what happened Sunday in Detroit. That's just the nature of the beast here. I'll let you talk for about 45 seconds while I grab this notebook, and I'll give you a handful of things that I still want to get at from this last game.
You are hilarious. Yeah. Here's the thing. We don't like that either. Sitting there on a Thursday before a Sunday game or whatever night, if it's a Monday game, to be asking those questions about I'd love to spend the last 2 days of the week previewing whomever the Bears are playing. So this, believe it or not, Haugh, this goes both ways. We don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it. So let's just all get it over with. We don't like losses. That's another thing we have to have. That is why, if you are a first-time listener or viewer to the podcast, we sometimes, Dan, every once in a while, we will just wax poetic about 2018, or maybe even have a Kyle Long on or an Allen Robinson, which is what things that we have done in the past.
Well, I'm going to rapid fire some of these topics at you, and you're just going to sit there kindly and go, after every one of these. And
Okay.
if you disagree, you can hit a Family Feud buzzer sound on me. But
I'm gonna hydrate.
Tight end usage, Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland still
Mm-hmm.
non-existent in the passing game. Let's learn more about that. Evaluation of Braxton Jones through 2 games, particularly after what was a rough performance of Braxton Jones on Sunday in Detroit at Ford Field. What does that mean for his hold on the starting job? Theo Benedict got in at the end of that game, by the way. Did he get any more clarity on the QB sneak failures after watching the video? Because we were promised that he'd get a look at that and maybe get a better feel on that. A positive question. What does he make of Rome Odunze's emergence at coming off a career game, which he topped 120 yards and had 2 touchdowns? I did get to ask the question about the lack of defensive edge. That was obvious on Sunday, which was not consistent with what we saw in camp. Gave a good answer to that. I wanted to know about his practical timeline for seeing Caleb reach some of the developmental checkpoints that he's set out for him, and how that calibrates his patience level in a way. We'll get into more of that in a minute. I wanted to know what he thinks of a Matt Eberflus-led defense. Oh, by the way, we'll get into that later in the pod as Matt Eberflus is coming down this week. And another positive one for you, Grote. The Bears have scored touchdowns on their opening drive in both of the first 2 games. Last year, in 17 games, they managed 6 total points on their opening possession. So they've made progress in that area. That's clearly been a strength. Obviously, it's a small sample size, as Ben noted yesterday, but there's a lot to dig into on a lot of those different topics, and it would be nice to have a little bit more time to try to get at some of that.
I mean, all fair questions, and I would I would add, Dan, what's going on with the first drive of the third quarter? That first scripted drive is really good, but 3 and outs. I mean, you defer for a reason, so you can get sometimes you get the old 2 for 1. And in both weeks against Minnesota and the Lions, you had a chance right there in both cases to get back in the game in the case of the Lions and continue to stomp away at the Minnesota Vikings in week 1.
By the way, both of those failed drives coming out of halftime came after the defense allowed unnecessary scores to end the first half, right? There was the late field goal against the Vikings, and then obviously the chaos at the end of the first half in Detroit. And so you've got to figure out how to sandwich halftime with some positive vibes, and they've done the opposite. They've used a couple of turds as the bread of the sandwich there for halftime.
So let's move it to, and those are all like great, and hopefully we'll get some semblance of answers as the week goes on, because we will get to talk to Ben Johnson a couple more times. Dan and I will be in the locker room at Halas Hall a couple of times this week, so hopefully we'll get some answers. And yes, actually look ahead to the Dallas Cowboys game, which we will do at the very end of this podcast as well. But Dan, what did we learn on Monday? I know we have some audio from DeAndre Swift and Ben Johnson. What do you think is one of the things that we learned going into this week?
We're going to start with a little sound from DeAndre Swift. But first of all, you were still on the call when DeAndre came on, correct?
I was, yes.
So it was a little later than we expected, and we weren't sure which player was going to show up on our Zoom screen, right? And so this is the old Chicago Bears thing where it's like a Jack in the Box that I joke about, where it's like do 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 do. And then all of a sudden, DeAndre Swift is on your screen, and there's like this 30-second pause of people trying to be like, oh, okay, we've got to recalibrate what we ask and how we ask it, because we've got somebody that we weren't expecting here on the screen. And they're like, does anybody have questions? You're like, yeah, but we were just now alerted that DeAndre Swift was going to be our spokesperson for today. So let us get organized here for a minute.
Dan, I was the first person to ask a question on that because I felt uncomfortable. Like one of the veteran reporters has to just ask something.
No
because
doubt.
poor Allie, who is great at her job, was like, anybody? So I was like, click. And I'm like, I said something to the effect
Hey, DeAndre, what'd you have for lunch today?
Yeah. And I said this, and I guess it was a good point that I sort of set up the question with. I understand that the circumstances of the game kind of called for not running the ball as much towards the end, but when DeAndre Swift was running the ball, he actually looked really good. And maybe I'm projecting because I want to, but it looked like he was hitting the holes a lot better. And when I did ask that question, of course, I made the mistake of kind of giving him a multiple choice. I said, are you hitting the holes harder? Or is this what you've always done? And of course, he says, this is what I've always done. Answer over.
Yeah, that was answer over. So we thank you for your service. You did break the ice successfully, and then you got rolling with DeAndre Swift. And you've heard me before talk about how much I enjoyed talking to DeAndre Swift, because while he is quiet and he's a reserved guy, he's willing to have a conversation. And I think there was some of that evident on Monday, even on the Zoom call. And one of the things that I was curious of learning from his perspective was just kind of what happens this week after they get, in their own coach's words, kicked in the teeth by the Lions, and how do they regroup from this? And so here's a little bit of an exchange with DeAndre Swift about the response that's needed here in week 3.
DeAndre, after a game like Sunday's, what's the response you want to see when you guys get back out to practice Wednesday through Friday?
Just execute, go back to work, man. That's what we have to do. Ain't nobody walking around with their head down or anything like that. I know we got a group of guys that's going to come in each and every week going to war for each other. And there's been adversity throughout these first 2 weeks early on. I guess that's what comes with it. You know what I mean? So we'll find out what type of team we exactly are real soon.
What do you want from your head coach? What do you want from Ben this week to help set that tone?
He's been doing everything. There's nothing more he can do or he can say. We need to follow his lead, and as players, go out there and execute and play clean ball. We haven't played a complete game yet, so I would love to see what that looked like.
Yeah, I like the way he kind of takes responsibility for it, that it's on the players. And look, of course, Ben Johnson has a lot of responsibility. We had Patrick Mully on the score today. I asked him specifically about the 8 penalties for 150 yards or whatever it was. Is that right? Did I don't want to misquote that. It was 8 for 50, 150, 8 for 50 yards. Yep. Error me. And he said immediately, it's on the players. It's on the players because my usual go-to is blame the coach. That's undisciplined football. He said, nope. That is on the players. And, we can get to Ben Johnson's part in all this, but I like that he's like, hey, man, it's on us.
They now have 13 penalties as an offense, 10 of them accepted through the first 2 weeks. That's way too many for a team that's only scored 5 touchdowns. You've got to get that ratio in a much more aligned spot. And they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to be, as DeAndre said, clean, with the way they execute going forward. Now, if you're looking for some hope and some optimism, you're talking about 3 of the next 4 opponents being opponents that should be closer to your class, right? You got the Cowboys coming to town this weekend. You follow with a trip to the Raiders. Commanders pretty good coming out of the bye, and then the Saints come to Soldier Field. And so you should have an opportunity to be very competitive in those football games, but it's going to require you to be a much tougher football team than we've seen the first 2 weeks, a much cleaner football team than we've seen the first 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Like if that, like you almost allow for it, you allow for sloppiness, I suppose, in the couple of weeks, even though here we are talking about it. But yeah, if that stuff doesn't get cleaned up, that's obviously going to be the death of the Bears. Dan, take us back a little bit. Take us back to Friday and Ben Johnson and what you're thinking about here right now.
Yeah, there's some good audio we're going to play in a second from Ben about the growing kind of relationship with Caleb Williams and what it means to how they game plan. And I wanted to get to this in the post game Sunday, but then the Bears lost in such epic fashion that just went by the wayside. And
I knew we weren't getting to that.
Yeah, no, I knew 4 plays into the third quarter that was scrapped. And so I was like, let's just table this and we'll get around to it at a break in the action in the midweek. And so here we are, a break in the action in the midweek. And we're going to hear from Ben Johnson from last Friday before they played the Lions with some of his philosophy and overview of what's happening with Caleb in the process of leading up to games. And then we'll build on it from there. Here's Ben.
I've been very happy with the process so far. He's very intentional with what he's doing. He's putting in the time. There are no shortcuts right now, and it's that balancing act for us as a staff. How much can we carry over from the previous plan, from training camp plays, where still having some designer plays that are in to attack that particular defense. And so we're finding that right level to where he can still play fast and confident football, but still give us enough in the arsenal for our guys to get the ball and do what they need to do. So I've been very happy with how he's been downloading the information. And I thought for the most part, last week was really good for him. This week on a shorter week it's more challenging, particularly on the road on a silent cadence. And so there's more factors at play.
Pretty good explanation there, Grote. And granted, week 2 was a shorter week with the Bears coming off Monday night, but you hear a head coach trying to get a greater feel with his starting quarterback of how much he can put on his plate within each game plan. And I think this is notable to keep an eye on here in the weeks and the months ahead as the Bears try to expand as an offense, right? And you hear Ben in that clip refer to designer plays, and those are plays that are opponent specific. part of Ben's brilliance in this league is being able to study an opposing defense and identify where they're vulnerable and then attack where they're vulnerable. And then what takes him to the next level as one of the top play callers in the league is his ability with his staff to then sort of go next level chess and think, hey, how is this opponent preparing for us? What are the rules that they're teaching their players to prepare for us? And knowing that, how can we then trick them and use those rules that they're preparing for us against them? That's where Ben Johnson's offense gets to where it was last year with the Detroit Lions, where they're leading the league in scoring, where they're tops in the NFC in yards, and every week it's a highlight reel. That's where the Bears want to go. Right now, they're not able to get there, in part because a young quarterback is still trying to figure out how much information he can download and how much the coaching staff can pile onto him. And so you heard from Ben there about, okay, so how much new stuff can we give him each week? How much stuff that is strictly designer plays, strictly targeted toward the opponent we're playing, and how much do we have to carry over stuff from our training camp offense, from our previous game plan? And that's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And you can hear in the coach there a desire to get further along with that, and I wouldn't call it a frustration, but at least a realization that they can't get there yet.
Yeah, exactly. I like the fact that he talked essentially about the work ethic early in that no shortcuts, that he is being intentional. And it did appear that, I thought Caleb was okay in the game against Detroit. And it seemed like he played with intentionality throughout that game, more decisive, all of that. Dan, you and I talked about this before we came on the air, and we'll play some of this probably Friday in our Listen to This segment, which comes back for the first time this year in this particular Bear season. But we had quarterback guru Tim Jenkins on the score, and he said, now this is from him and a guy that I trust because he watches the film like we all do, but he watches it probably with more intentionality than the rest of us, and with a better eye for it as well. He said, essentially, just to oversimplify it, that they scripted more than just the first drive for Caleb Williams. And he also said that Caleb Williams, he's like through it's just in year 2, he's not bashing the guy, but that is a way of saying they are keeping things very simple for Caleb Williams right now.
You're going back to plays and concepts that you've already run in the game,
yes,
because they're comfortable for your quarterback, and you're trying to develop the comfort and confidence there. And so it's a thing. It's a real thing. If you can get success out of that, great. The long-term view of all of this for Ben, for Caleb, for the offense as a whole is to be able to get more advanced as quickly as possible. And the Bears are going to have to find a way to get there. One of the things you heard in that clip is there are no shortcuts, right? And so they just have to go step by step and not convince themselves that they're further along than they are. And that's the sign of a good coach of acknowledging that and not putting themselves in a disastrous situation by trying to force things. But eventually you're going to have to get things moving at a pace that allows you to keep up and compete. We're going to play one more clip of Ben Johnson just talking about his review of Caleb in Detroit, and then we'll kind of riff off that about what it means about where they go from here. Here's Ben reviewing Caleb.
I did see significant growth. It's not perfect yet. There's still a number of plays where our eyes aren't quite in the right position, or we're holding on to the ball just a tick longer than what we're coaching. But I did see tremendous growth in terms of going through the progression. There were a few times there where we had to get to number 3 or number 4 in the read, and he was trusting his feet and his footwork and was able to get there. So I did think he got better from week 1 to week 2. I'm encouraged by what I saw, and I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see another leap here this week.
He's certainly not talking in hyperbole in any way, shape, or form. He's staying measured on that, and it's obvious that we're making progress, but a long way to go is what I'm hearing.
You're right. There's two different things there. I'm encouraged and we're making progress versus we're on the verge of an imminent breakthrough, right? Like they're two different things. What has tickled me a little bit, I think somebody asked Khalil Mack years ago if he was tickled by something. He said, "You said tickled?"
Yeah, I remember that. Who was that?
What has tickled me a little bit this week is the grandest praise of Caleb Williams coming out of Detroit is he wasn't the biggest problem. He wasn't that bad. Those are the compliments being attached to the starting quarterback of the Bears. Caleb Williams was drafted number 1 overall in the 2024 draft. It wasn't to be not the biggest problem and not that bad. It was to be the guy that wins football games at a high level. I get it. He's 2 starts into his first season with his new coach. He's 2 starts into his second season. This stuff's going to take some time and some patience. But we got to stop moving the goalposts about what a number 1 overall pick is supposed to accomplish as the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. He's supposed to become the guy that is the reason they're winning football games sooner rather than later. And you can't just sort of throw a mini parade and pop some streamers because he wasn't the biggest problem in the 31-point loss.
Yeah, well, you know what I think it was? Because I've thought the same thing, Dan. This was a collective break for all of us to spend 80% of our time talking about QB1, right? Because the defense was the obvious story.
Right.
So it allows for not just you and I, but taking in everything in the Bears world. Everybody has kind of said, yeah, Caleb was fine. It's because everybody needed a break from it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that's really what it comes down to. But you're spot on correct. And that's a thing. Like, I don't want to move the goalposts. You know what I mean? Like, I like when we talk about Caleb, making the easy throws, like, I'm still all for Caleb becoming the Caleb from USC and trying to make big plays and taking over games. I want all of it still. And it is too early to give up on all of that too.
Oh, no question. No, way too early. But when you're talking about sort of where is the immediate ceiling, right, for 2025, right? Like, I think it's come down a little ways because you thought at some point in the offseason that, okay, his union with Ben is going to take off and they're going to be able to be a really competitive football team. And you're seeing now that this stuff is going to take some time and it's going to take some patience. And so you've got to be okay with that. The person whose patience matters the most is the head coach, right? Like, and that's what's going to be fascinating through the rest of September, October, and November is how Ben handles some of the bumps in the road, knowing how competitive he is, how intense he is, and how much he wants to get this quarterback to the next level. And Caleb's going to have to find a path to get there because, again, like, he was drafted here to be, I'll say it, the savior of this organization, right? And look, like, we were banging on that drum as like, this is the pick you have to make to try to get yourself to the land that you need to go in. And the question I have asked a few people, and I'll ask it to you now, is given what you've seen, not just in the first 2 games, but training camp, the offseason, all of last season, do you envision a situation here in the very near future where Caleb puts together a month worth of really good football, like 4 games of really good football? And I think the answer is probably,
yeah, no, I can't guarantee that. I can't. I mean, like, I can say that I wouldn't be surprised if he had a game where he threw 2 or 3 touchdown passes for 275 yards, like a really good game.
Yep.
He did that last year in the London game where we were all like, there it is, the Bears have a quarterback. So I could see that. But Dan, you and I watched training camp. It was not a great training camp for Caleb Williams this year. To sit here and say or to predict something great from Caleb Williams in the first half of this season would be borderline irresponsible.
Yeah, you get it.
We don't want to be
irresponsible. The nail on the head. We're not irresponsible here.
Let's talk about what is next for the Bears. It is Matt Eberflus and the Dallas Cowboys coming to Soldier Field. The Cowboys are 1-1 team. They lost their opener, which most of us watched, a 24-20 loss to Philadelphia, which I thought the Cowboys played a lot better than a lot of us thought they would play. And then Dallas wins game 2 at the New York Giants, 40-37, with Dak Prescott going 38 of 52, 361 yards, 2 TDs, and a pick. But the Flus is going to be back on the sidelines for the Bears, Dan.
Shootout, coming off a shootout there in that game that you just mentioned. Matt Eberflus's defense was gashed on Sunday by Russell Wilson, Malik Neighbors, and the New York Giants. They have similar problems to what the Bears have had. They have had a secondary that hasn't been capable of covering top-tier receivers, and they've got a pass rush that's not getting home to take the pressure off that secondary. And so you would think that Ben and Caleb can get in that film of Dallas and find some openings to say, look at the playmakers we have. Let's make this happen. Let's get this point total up in the 30s. Like, that should be realistic for the Bears this week if they can find a way to click and go. This will be, as you mentioned, Matt Eberflus's return to Soldier Field for the first time since the Thanksgiving weekend firing. It's going to be awkward. I think Matt is scheduled to meet the Dallas media on Thursday afternoon. You imagine he'll get some questions about the return to Chicago, about his time working with Caleb Williams. And I'd imagine that he would sidestep those and
Sure.
on the game and kind of, Matt wasn't a real smooth orator when the topics were easy. I can't imagine him giving a Shakespearean soliloquy about the return to Soldier Field. And so it just comes down now to the chess match of Ben versus Matt, right? Like a little bit on Sunday, and who can kind of get the best of Caleb Williams. Can Ben get the best out of Caleb Williams? And can Matt Eberflus try to get the best of Caleb Williams? And so that's really interesting to watch.
And if there is some sort of opportunity for I don't know if Flus would be announced or if like they show him on the video board coming in. I will just say this. I don't know if I've said this with you or if I said it on the score. Sometimes I forget where I've said things, but I don't want him to be booed or mocked or anything, because guess what? He already took all of that. You know what I'm saying? He's the first Bears head coach to be fired in season, so I can't control any of that stuff, but I don't need hate for Matt Eberflus this Sunday at Soldier Field. I hope that is not the case.
Matt was asked to get on a Zoom call with the media the day after Thanksgiving, and then an hour later was fired, right?
Yeah.
Like, so he
got his.
He understands what happened here, right? Like we don't need to kind of to relive in that world. And so, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. And like I say, the X's and O's of the whole thing is what really is going to be interesting to watch on Sunday afternoon at Soldier Field, with a Bears crowd that as well as anybody is going to be very tense.
Oh yeah,
they're not going to love a scoreless first quarter. Let's just say that.
Oh yeah, no, the boos came in game one, and I think we might have predicted that, man. It's just year after year. How many season debuts have Bears fans booed? It has been many in the modern era for sure. We got to get out of here, but if we can, let's bring in the newly married Adam Studzinski, the executive producer here of Take the North. I just want everybody to see what Adam looks like as a married man, and we want to see if he looks any different than he did as a single man or an engaged man. Congratulations, lad. Adam Studzinski, a married man. How do you feel, kid?
Sharp haircut.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Yeah, my guy JR, best barber in the city, hooked it up on this one. So
shout out to JR. Where's JR? Where is he? He's in the city, you said?
He just opened a new shop actually in close to Rogers Park.
Okay.
Give me two shake. Before the end of the podcast, I'll have the name for you because it's literally just opened.
All right, well, you look good. You look healthy.
Thank you. Yeah, I got the ring on. Obviously, there's the ring. It's my grandpa's ring actually, so that's really cool to be able to have that.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. The day, like everyone told me, it was weird. Like everyone told me, hey, the day goes by really fast. I didn't feel like it did. I think my now wife's day was a little different than mine because the girls get all their makeup and stuff done. So she was up like early in the morning. It's like I had a really relaxing morning where I just kind of got up and I went to breakfast with one of my buddies who was an usher and
okay,
and then I just kind of hung out until we did our first look, and it was really relaxing and fun. And so and I told one of my buddies as the reception was starting, I'm going to try and drink all the bourbon in the city. And and the next morning, I felt like I really gave it a good run. It didn't
We're
quite
proud of you. We're proud of you.
But I felt like I gave it the old college effort. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great day. So it was great. Thanks for the congratulations, guys.
Yeah, of course, man. Good for you.
Yeah, it was it was great to have all my family there and April's family, my wife. And
did you watch the Bears game on Sunday? The day
I did. Okay, so if you guys want to know how Sunday went, so I told everyone, I was like, hey, like we got this brunch thing that's happening at 10 in the morning Sunday, and I was like, at noon they're putting the Bears game on, and like I'm checked out. So and I stayed deliberately checked out of everything sports from Thursday until Sunday at noon. Sit down, watch the game, and I was worried because we had massages scheduled at 3:00, and I was like, the game might not be over by 3:00. And then, by the fourth quarter, I'm like, well, okay, screw it.
Let's go get that massage.
Yeah.
I almost got a massage at 3:00 on Sunday.
It was. But I did tell you guys the last podcast I was on Friday, the one we launched on this last Friday. I said I wouldn't accept a loss, and I didn't accept the loss.
Good.
In my world, that game didn't happen, and I just moved on from my life. So,
like I always say, denial is a very healthy thing.
It was really nice to not have to. I will say, shout out to Robbie for being able to produce the post game pod, because it was really nice to not have to deal with it. I'll tell you, it was nice to say, screw it, and just go about the rest of my day. So it was a great weekend, relaxing, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Great to see it.
Well, congrats to you in April. That is fantastic. And I think we're going to wrap things up here. Dave the Cat, you may have heard his presence a couple of times. It is
saw his presence at one point. He jumped up there in the screen. I loved it.
Yeah. Dave is. We don't usually record this at this time, and I was like, oh man, Dave's got a point. I usually feed him at 5.
Yeah.
So he's being very patient right now. But I should probably go feed him. So, Dan, anything else before we get out of here?
Just get that can of 9 Lives cracked and get that cat fed.
For Dan Wiederer of The Athletic, for the newly married man, Adam Studzinski, I'm Mark Grote saying thank you for listening to and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.